Hello, 3DMJers. This is Andrea Valdez, and I'd like to welcome you to Season 14 of the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. We are kicking this one off with a bang as Alberto, Jeff, and Eric are in the same room discussing the ins and outs and ups and downs of what has made 3DMJ into the industry-leading coaching group and community that exists today. This podcast was recorded a couple of weeks before you're hearing it, as the guys were together in Sacramento, California, a few days prior to the California Natural Muscle Mayhem. This particular bodybuilding show is special to our team for many reasons that you'll hear throughout the duration of this recording, and this particular year makes it even more unique, as Jeff, Eric, and 8 other 3DMJ athletes were able to compete here during the team's 10-year anniversary. You'll hear much more about that, all the mayhem appearances leading up to this, how each of the men have viewed their competitive history, what builds our band of brothers and sisters, and what natural bodybuilding has done for us this decade. If you're an athlete just starting out and want to hear about what a real competitive career looks and feels like, we hope you'll stick around for this. If you're a seasoned athlete who would love to reflect with us in our journeys, or a coach who's looking to build a team of support around your endeavors, we think you'll like this as well. I'm going to go ahead and stop talking because I'll let Eric take over as he kind of hosts this one. So let's go ahead and get into this super special and personal episode. Here is Building Something That Matters from Competition to Community, featuring Jeff Alberts, Alberto Nunez, and Eric Helms.
So we've got a rich history with the show that we got coming up on Saturday. And I think probably that history, like all history, starts with Jeff.
I'm the old guy, right?
I mean, you're not the young guy.
No, I'm not the young guy.
You're not the young guy. So can you tell us about the Muscle Mayhem that might have been called something else in the past? And how long you've been aware of the show and attending and maybe even competing?
So basically in the late 90s, I didn't even know what natural bodybuilding was, because prior to 99 was the first year of the Muscle Mayhem, but formerly known as the Capital City.
Right.
So I basically just saw a flyer for this show back in the day. I'm like, oh, natural bodybuilding. Let me try this show out. So
I don't take steroids. How nice.
Right. So prior to that was like a lot of NPC shows that I was doing. So I ended up doing that show in 99. And if I remember right, I think it was NGA.
Yes.
And
so back in 1999, 20 years ago, the NGA was one of the amateur affiliates of the WNBF.
Yeah.
And it was an NGA show that was a pro qualifier for the WNBF called the...
Actually, I think NGA was just NGA.
Okay.
I don't think it was affiliated with the WNBF.
It eventually became affiliated with WNBF. And then it went back to itself.
Yeah. So the show itself had maybe 19 competitors total? 20 maybe?
Nice.
And I entered the novice class at that show.
However, in 99, how many divisions were there?
Oh, let's see. This was just basically bodybuilding.
Yeah,
there was no figure, there was no men's physique, no bikini, it was just straight bodybuilding. So female bodybuilding, men's bodybuilding, then of course they had the novice, the open, masters.
Was there fitness?
No.
So 19 competitors is actually not that bad, because now you're looking at having 4 to 5 in each class. You have 19 competitors in a show today, you've got missing divisions entirely, and then a bunch of men's physique and bikini.
Yeah, or you have a lot of crossovers.
Yeah, fair enough.
So there was a smaller show, but well ran. And I mean, the talent back then it's not what it is today, obviously, because we've grown so much. But it was, at the time, I was like thinking going into the show, like, I'm probably going to end up doing pretty well here, because I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, I've done the NPC, these guys are stacked. Okay, go to a natural show, they're probably going to be, the quality isn't going to be good. But I was quite surprised, like, actually, it's pretty competitive.
Right. It wasn't the farm league you expected.
No, not at all.
So how'd you do in 99?
I ended up taking second in my class. which I can't remember if I was a light heavy at the time. But I lost to a guy that had a great physique, pretty conditioned for the standard back then, pretty conditioned. And backstage, he actually was growling at me.
Growling?
When we were pumping up.
Can you maybe imitate that for us?
Yeah, he's basically going like that.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't know bodybuilding was such a vicious sport.
Oh, geez, that's an animal. That's
a true story, though.
That's amazing. I don't know that I would have kept a straight face.
I didn't. I had to walk away. But yeah, I ended up losing to him by 1 point, and
because he got in your head, dog.
He did, and so the next year it was all about beating this guy because I was going back into 2000. So I did do it in 2000. Now that I remember. And he beat me again.
Oh, the growl.
So yeah, the 2000 I took third. He took second. Actually, there was actually another guy.
Someone who growled at him.
Yeah, that
chain growling.
Yeah. Trent Rogers.
Okay.
Basically, who he ended up passing away later on, but they have an award now in his name that gets passed out every year. But Trent Rogers was just a stacked natural bodybuilder. He won the show, won the capital city, then went on to compete as a pro and did fairly well.
That's awesome. Do you know how well he did at Worlds?
I can't recall Worlds, but he did, like when I did a show in Texas in 2002 as an amateur, he was a pro, and he ended up taking second.
Okay.
To, I think it was Miles Stovall that won that show.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Miles Stovall is a world champion.
Yeah. So Trent was, he was stacked. And I remember talking to him backstage, super nice, humble guy. Mm-hmm. And the guy trained basically he was kind of like same disciple of Dorian Yates HIIT type training. So we kind of, back then.
And that influence, or that shared similarity.
Yeah, so we kind of clicked, and I got to know him a little bit, which was really nice. Mm-hmm. And then his wife too, Marcella, I think her name is.
Right, okay. So now we're up to 2001? 2002?
2002 is the show in Texas that he did as a pro. Mm-hmm. 2000 was the year he turned pro at the capital city.
Right.
So, yeah, that was kind of like my early history with the Mayhem.
Right, so at this time the Cap City became the Mayhem. It switched from NGA to INBF, WNBF.
That was INBF in 2000, yeah.
And it was, at this time, it was still an amateur show. It wasn't a pro-am yet.
Nope.
Bob and Tina were promoters. They were not the owners of the INBF, WNBF.
No, yeah. And actually, I can't remember the exact numbers in 2000, but it definitely grew quite a bit.
Right.
And in 2000, was it 2000? Yeah, 2000 year he won. It was pretty stacked. Like the class winners, like the level of competition kind of elevated a little bit.
Up. Yep. And for the most part, if I recall, I think 90% of the INBF shows in the early 2000s were all East Coast, and then NANBF was at the time affiliated, and maybe NGA for a minute, and that was mostly Midwest. South, but for California, I want to say Cap City was the only INBF show. I don't even think there were SoCal shows at this time.
Yeah, and I can't recall.
Yeah,
I don't think there was.
So I remember you used to travel into San Diego and do NPC shows. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think isn't there a natural NPC show down there, or was?
There probably was.
Yeah.
So yeah, other than Cap City, I competed in 2000. I traveled to Oregon because there was an INBF show in Oregon.
Right.
So I went there to try to, get pro status. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was Cap City, and that was it.
Yeah, or you got to go out of state.
California.
Yep. Or there's other organizations like the INBA, PNBA has always been around. Mm-hmm. I don't recall how long Johnny's NGA show has been around. Do you know how long that's been around? So it's the other reasonably large California show.
No, because I didn't do that show till 2009. Yeah. So
I want to say that's been around since the mid 2000s, but I could be wrong. So, okay, so you did it in 2004?
2004, yep. That would be the next go-around.
So let's talk about your 04 outing.
That was not a very good outing. So basically, my brother competes as well, and he wanted to do the show, and he did fairly well at that show. And my heart wasn't in competing at that year. So he's like, come on, let's do it. And so, yeah, I got ready in 9 weeks. I lost like 27 pounds.
27 pounds in 9 weeks, folks.
And let's just say I looked like I lost 27 pounds in 9 weeks. A little on the softer side, a little flat.
Lost some muscle probably.
Fortunate enough to win the middleweight class. But in the overall, I got destroyed. I came in last.
Do you remember who was in the overall?
Lamar, I forget his last name. Young phenom. Like he
Right.
kind of moved up the ranks. Like he started as a teen, won the team division. He moved up again, won, and then he ended up turning pro in 2004.
That dude looked like a little Sean Ray.
Yeah,
he was amazing.
He was pretty stacked.
Yep.
But yeah, that was kind of my experience in 2004. It was just not a very optimal prep.
Right.
But I got to do it with my brother, so I mean.
So a good experience at the very least. So did you shut the season down after that?
Yeah, that was the only show I did that year.
Yeah, I can understand after that kind of trauma.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
So when was the next time you stepped on the Cap City stage after 04?
It wasn't till 2009.
So, okay, so before 09, now there's a little gentleman known as the Ivory Latino who's coming into play here. I actually first attended, just to spectate, the Cap City in 07. So the first time Berto and I competed was at the Silver and Black in 07, which is an INBA show in Oakland where we both kind of grew up in the Bay Area. And then I did the Contra Costa in 07. Berto didn't do the Contra, but you did the next show for you with the NGA California. So you did Johnny's show in 07, and it was established at that point, so I do think it was the mid-2000s. And then I went and supported you at it, but my season was over, and then I went and watched the Cap City just to support and see what INBF show was like. And it was, so the 07 Cap City was the first time I was aware of that show and went to it. But 2008, Berto, tell us about your experience with, I think it was still the Cap City, and it was still the INBF at that point.
Yeah, and I remember first time I knew about that show was 2006. It was in the back of that quarterly Natural Bodybuilding magazine. And you had to hunt for shows back then.
Yeah.
It was all the way in the back, and it looked like small print, basically. And
It's like the classifieds.
I was so excited because the WNBF was the premier federation at the time, like by far. And I'm like, oh, wow, we have one of these shows in California. And
Not
it's
only
in Sacramento.
that, an hour and a half from where you live.
Yeah. So I was very excited. In 2007, which was our first season, I took enough wrong turns at that point where it was kind of an unfixable prep in many ways. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I knew how good that show was. I think there's one overall that I remember where I think Leroy Perry couldn't get out of the heavyweights. You know, that's when Rodney Hilaire was, he came all the way from Georgia, and Rodney's just like, man, to see that as an amateur must be mind-blowing.
That was 2006 because there was like every class winner.
Moji
Yeah,
in that overall.
it was exactly. There was Mike Lopez, Moji,
It was insane.
Rodney. I remember being in the audience watching that one.
That was insane. Yeah. So I knew what you had to bring to do okay, and I was a little.
I think Rodney Hilaire and Leroy Perry got their pro cards at the Mayhem. Is that
No,
right?
no. Leroy had to leave the state.
Oh,
After
yeah.
that, he's like, this is in my own backyard, and this keeps happening here because at that point the show was like pretty established and doing well. So he went out of state. I think that year actually to get his pro card.
For those who don't know, Leroy Perry, want to say top two. I think he's placed second at Worlds in the heavies.
Consistently top 5 at heavies at Worlds. That's insane. And if he wanted to today, he still could. Like he's that kind of a bodybuilder. He's like a Sam almost. You know, that's what he was. Sam Okanola, like very similar to him.
It's like a tall Clarence McGill.
Yeah. So complete. But yeah, so I was like 2007. No capital city for me. I was not going to compete the next year, but I did. I just was so disappointed with that season that I had to make up for it. And yeah, this time we made it. We hired some help, which I definitely needed at that point, and had Lane Norton help me out with that prep. And
Got you on the evidence-based track.
yeah, I counted calories for the first time in 8 years.
Had those macros. Mm-hmm. Unnecessarily low because you were weighing in at night once a week and inconsistently reporting.
But we got peeled.
Well, you got it done.
We got peeled.
Yeah.
It was. I had done well at every other show prior. Like I got pro qualified in the silver and black. That's a PINBA pro card, the NGA.
PNBA.
But I wanted the WNBF. To me, it's like if you don't have the WNBF, it's like, well, at this point, I was so stubborn. Like I didn't even want to do a novice class because I'm like, I've been training for 8 years. Like I've been training for something. So I decided to, go for it all at the WNBF Cap City, and man, it worked out. It worked out really well. So I got my pro card there, and
so to give some context, because I got to watch all the. I was hungry because 07, Berto and I competed, and I was like, all right, I need more time. The feedback I got was I need to be bigger, so I got to be chomping at the bit watching you compete. I watched him steamroll the silver and black. No offense to Brad who's not here, didn't notice that Brad was competing at that show. Because here's the thing about Brad. He has to be peeled to be competitive. But when he gets peeled, and he's peeled, he definitely stands out. So Berto did that show, steamrolled it. No offense to anybody, but you just looked amazing. And your shoulders and head and shoulders above everybody else. You did very well at the NGA California. Also won your NGA Pro card there after getting your PNBA Pro card at the silver and black. I think you were going against Bill in the overall for that one. He won the heavies, really good physique. There was a few competitive folks in that, but again, I think you were a very clear winner there. And then I remember Todd Beasley, shout out Todd, and I were very, and Barb, everyone who came was very confident that you were going to steamroll this show too after watching you show up, and just no one had that kind of detail or strided glutes or shape like Berto at that time. And we watched I want to say it was the middles, because you were in the lights. Yeah. We watched the middles, and this gentleman steps out who just looks like he's made of like hard plastic, and when he flexes, all of a sudden you realize the plastic's alive. He looks flexed before he starts flexing, and this was Brad Loomis. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a competitor leaner than Berto, which was crazy. So Brad walked out there, and Todd and I just looked at each other, and we thought, oh, he's going to have some trouble in the overall. And it wasn't that scary once you guys got in the overall together, just because Berto was maybe not quite as tight, but just had a much better overall package. You're kind of hard to deny, my friend. But that was, I think you had a real battle on your hands there. And if you had totally screwed the pooch and done something silly with your peak or not posed well, I think Brad could have snuck you, which is kind of crazy to think about.
He was messaging me like right after the silver and black. He was so competitive.
Did he growl at you?
He did everything but growl.
Did he steal your food?
He was letting me know that he was going to bring it, basically,
Man.
And so he wanted a shot. And I think it started with him asking me, are you going for the Cap City? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, it's on, basically. And yeah, I remember seeing him backstage, and I'm like, oh, wow. I can't believe this is the same dude that was backstage talking with a friend, Ken. It was a 180 from what he looked like at that earlier show 2 months prior. So yeah, that was crazy to watch. I really enjoyed seeing that side of Brad.
Yeah, man.
He was fearless. He was fearless as a competitor. It definitely pushed me, because I'm like, oh wow, so this dude, he's up to something. Yep. And he certainly was. So he looked amazing in his own way.
No, I think that was basically as good as Brad could have looked at that point in his career and development. I think he looked maybe a little fuller when he went and did Kevin Denise's show. So that's another. At the time, it was Kevin and Denise's show up in Washington. Mm-hmm. This is another. It has just as much history as the team, or close to it, as the Cap City at the time is what it was called. But it was a month later, in August, and Brad drove up and beat a guy named Luke Ellis, who is basically the Hulk.
Yeah, he's massive.
Yeah, 5'9", competes when he's shredded around 190, maybe high 180s if I recall correctly, and just built like a brick shithouse. Like he would probably say, I don't have the best genetics for bodybuilding, and like that's like true and not true. Like Luke Ellis carries a ton of muscle, but you look at him and he's got joints the size of an elephant. So yeah, it results in maybe a very broad hip structure. and his strength reflects that, and it does result in maybe him not looking as pleasing to the eye as, say, a Jeff Alberts or an Alberto Nunez. But he also had these crazy cool quad striations, thick, huge back, lats that insert in the top of his glutes, and one of the few guys at 5'9" we knew who could compete, not quite in perfect shape, but good enough shape at like 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Now, he did actually do much better when he got himself under 190 and down to 190, but that's who Brad had to go against, and Brad beat him competing at 155, I think.
Yeah.
And that was a month after our little battle that we had, yeah.
Yep. So Brad had some really stiff competition in 08. He had I think he got a few points against Berto. I don't think it was a clean sweep in that overall. Maybe some very conditioning heavy judges. And then he beat Luke Ellis by not much.
Yeah, it was like maybe 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, it was 1 or 2 points, I think. And that would be the first of 2 years where Luke had to face a 3DMJ coach in the overall and didn't get the nod. But he eventually would turn pro. And so that year, Brad turned pro at the what's the name of Kevin D's show?
IMBF Washington State.
The Washington State, that's right. Yeah, and he also got his RKC certification at the same time, just to show you how crazy the man is. So the next year, 09, was the first time I did that show. And I basically kind of knew what was happening going into it, because Berto, after having his succession of just crushing things as far as 08, we tried to repeat, and we found out that I am not Berto, and I can't win every single pro card. And I placed essentially top 3. I won my class a couple times, I placed second a bunch of times, placed second in my class to the eventual winner. But I did the silver and black, I did the NGA California, I did the Cap City, I did the Washington State, and then I did Leroy Perry's show that happened for a few years, the West Coast Classic. And I got into multiple overalls with this jerk, because he also decided to compete that year. So at the silver and black, I was simply it was a warm-up show. I wasn't in shape, and I placed third in my class, I think deservedly. Tightened up, struggled with a hamstring tear, and then went against the gentleman who you would eventually beat in the overall in 09 at Johnny's show. I'm blanking on his name. Dave. G.
Blumgold.
Dave Blumgold, that's right, who won the Masters overall. Really competed shredded.
50-year-old man.
Yes.
He was pretty,
really sick physique.
Yeah, he had some good muscle and was conditioned, yeah.
And I think that was a really inspiring thing for all of us to see, to be like, oh, we're going to be doing this in our 50s.
Yeah. And
now we're damn near close and actually seeing that as a reality.
Well, I'm damn near close.
Well, we're all seeing the possibilities, remembering this was 10 years ago. So yeah, Dave Blumgold beats me in the class, basically just on conditioning, really just making me look kind of soft. Although I did look substantially better. So I took second in that class. And then Dave goes against Jeff. Jeff, they have a good battle, and Jeff ends up winning his NGA pro card, which is the first pro card.
Yeah, it was the first pro card. At 38.
At 38, coming out of retirement after 3 years.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And that was pretty cool. I talked his ear off at the show. He didn't really want to talk much back, but I warmed him up.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah, because I remember my ex-wife's like, did you meet any nice people back there? I said, yeah, there's a guy named Eric, but he talks way too much.
Yeah, I don't know if I met a nice guy. I met a guy who wouldn't shut up.
That's because I'm quiet,
Yeah. But I remember I met, Paul was helping you out. He was having you drink more water, which I think was probably the first time you drank that much water going into or at least it was that season you were drinking a lot.
No, not back in 2000 is when I kind of changed some of the methods because prior to that it was about cutting water, cutting sodium, all that old school voodoo stuff.
I guess what was cool was that Berto and I were bright, starry-eyed, young, evidence-based folks who were listening to Dr. Joe and Lane, and we were all like, hey, we don't cut water. It was like our identity back then. Yeah. And you were like, yeah, I've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is the vice president of WNBF now, Bob Bell, promoters of Cap City and Muscle Mayhem, he's the one. He called me up on the phone one day back in 2000, because he knew I was going to be competing in the Oregon show. So he's like, hey, Jeff, he's asked me what I'm doing and stuff. And of course I'm saying, yeah, I'm doing this, this, and this. He's like, hey, how about we drink a couple gallons of water? Hey, how about we throw a little bit of cardio in there? Hey, why don't we do this and that? And I'm like, I don't know. Because I was pretty successful up to that point. At least I thought I was, because I won a few divisions and things over the years. So I'm like, I know what I'm doing.
You're successful.
I was a little hard-headed, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna listen to what he says and try it. And yeah, it was like 2000. Like, oh, this water thing actually works. Wow, I'm fuller and harder.
There were actually some pretty gnarly pictures of you in 2000.
Yeah, I actually had a good season. That was like my first year where I actually like started to look more the part.
Yeah, you were coming in shape.
So yeah, Bob was not just promoting, but he was also he was helping a lot of people out. So it was like maybe a 15-minute phone call that changed my trajectory.
That's awesome.
So it was pretty cool.
Shout out Bob Bell. Yeah. So yeah, that was we were way too excited about things like that backstage. But the cool thing for us, and Berto, I don't know if you agree with this, is that we felt we had arrived somewhere by reading science, being part of the counterculture in natural bodybuilding, and we were really impressed with you because you had gotten there through experience, trial and error, observation. So it felt like it lent us maybe some credibility. Like we weren't, like Berto was a burgeoning new star of the natural bodybuilding scene, but I was just some punk kid who was doing okay and thought he knew more than he did, but maybe knew a little more than everybody else, you know. So Berto, what was your experience of that when we first met Jeff?
What I was taken back by was that in many ways it was just very reasonable, his approach compared to what a lot of people were doing to get there. So he was very even keel about everything.
Very logical.
Yeah, very logical. And I mean, it's crazy to think about it, but back then, you just don't see it as much. But it was so weird to drink water. I remember vividly, like a few athletes had a can of soda, basically, that this was their water for the whole day. In Sacramento in July, I mean, it's hot. Like that might cover a meal in the morning, like I think, right? So, it was comforting to see that, hey, someone had gone here via, trying this, messing up, and more or less the way he did things, it ran parallel to what we had been taught through mostly reading at this point and not necessarily practice. That it was very similar. So yeah, and he was a nice dude, which was also. He was one of the most badass physiques backstage, but he was also as quiet as he is, he was very open to helping someone out, and there was just a positive vibe to the dude.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed with Jeff at the June show was he came in wearing clothes, and you could see he was one of the few competitors with sunken cheeks. And this was something that we talked about on the bodybuilding.com forums, was beware the man with the sunken cheeks, The dude who comes in looking big, looking off-season, who you think you're afraid of because you feel small, he's going to look soft.
Yep.
But the dude who comes in looking like he's got a big nose and he's been emaciated and his cheeks are hard.
Well, I always look like I have a big nose. I'm Italian, man.
It looks a little bigger when you don't have cheeks. Adam spotted it immediately. He was like, hey. And then I noticed his calves and I was like, oh. So I saw calves, sunken cheeks, and I had a feeling that he was going to be a threat, and that's when he ended up winning the show.
Well, and you can see skeletal structure through clothes.
Yes.
And you're like, this is dangling really pretty on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You look like a muscle hanger.
Yeah.
So.
And you basically talking to him, like meeting him backstage, was like, who's this scruffy dude? Because he had like that scruffy beard and that hair that was everywhere.
Yeah, he looked like the janitor.
And he kept looking at me like that. And I was like, this guy's kind of weird. But he, like, with the question he asked me, he's like, so what are you going to do next? I was like, I'm going to do, Cap City.
Yep.
And he's like, so what are you going to do? I go, I'm going to get leaner. He's like, all right.
Yep. So, this was the year before I really figured out just what I needed to do to get lean. And we were way over leveraging cardio. This was back when HIIT was the end all be all. And for me, it was the end hamstring, B not very much. I did get leaner from each one of these shows, but I spent over a month without losing any weight, or a month and a half maybe. So I went from like 190 at the silver and black. For reference, right now, me totally peeled is 175. So 15 over, legitimately, at the silver and black, which is okay shape for me, from the waist up, basically, down to 188 at the NGA, and then I was able to get down to the mid 180s for the Cap City. So starting to look better and better and better. And this time, we did the Cap City, just again, now the Mayhem. And who's in my class again? Same
Dave.
Big old shredded guy, Dave Bloomgold. And I was able to get the nod over him this time because I tightened up. It was definitely close. And then I go into the overall, and oh man, it is big boy time. Because I was up there with not only Jeff Alberts, but also Moji Olua, and another seasoned competitor who now is a promoter and pro, Brian Bausman. Mm-hmm. So I stepped kind of out of the frying pan into the fire. And Jeff, why don't you tell us about your experience in that overall, and also in your class at the 09 Cap City?
So the class, basically, I was a lightweight.
That's
I
right.
actually made it into the lightweights because I lost another 4 or 5 pounds from the show prior, which was about 4 weeks.
This was like pre-refeeds, pre-creatine.
Yeah, this was just...
Were you taking creatine at this time?
No.
Yeah, and so no creatine, no refeeds.
No refeeding. Just basically, I just remember like from the NJ California to the Cap City, those 4 weeks, I was grinding like the whole time. Dropped 4 pounds.
Your volume was also like... If you think Jeff's volume is low now,
it was really low there because it was like 2 sets in exercise and that's it.
And you were training how many times a week?
4 times back then.
Okay. Yeah.
So I mean, you're talking like maybe 10 sets of workout total.
Yep.
So it was low volume. But yeah, I went into that show. I think I weighed in at 159.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, I ended up winning my class because I looked like a big lightweight. Yeah. And then, like you said, in that overall, we got in with Moji, who's like, at the time, like one of the, like he turned pro and he's like one of the elites.
Yeah, he turned pro and then started placing top 5 in pro shows.
So if you remember that overall was pretty awesome. Like we actually got a standing ovation. I've never seen a standing ovation at a show before.
I was the comedic relief because I melted.
You melted?
Yeah. So this is not a knock on the spray tanner at all. Because Janelle did a great job. This was a knock on me, A, not exfoliating, and B, not knowing that I don't do well with kind of high carbs going into the show after being on low carbs. It just made me ramp up, sweat a lot, and be watery. And so essentially, I just sweat off my whole tan because it was a very difficult pose down. Really, the pose down was essentially Jeff and Moji battling it out. Myself and Brian were there. We deserved to be there, but that was a very tight decision.
It was so what ended up happening is like when we were going through the quarter turns, like Wade Brown was it Wade? Yeah, it was Wade Brown.
Yeah, Wade was still the head judge. He kept
calling him. You think you're done? He's like, "Gentlemen, face the curtain." You're like,
yep.
What again? And they just kept doing it over and over again. And then we did the pose down, got the standing ovation. And of course, you know, when they announce the winner, it takes forever. Tina takes forever to announce the name.
Yep. Builds the
drama.
drama.
Being Moji, which I wasn't upset whatsoever because my whole mindset with that whole season was just go have fun. Yep. And so it didn't really bother me. I lost by 1 point until I started to walk off stage and she goes, "Jeff, 1 point." And then I was like, for about 10 seconds, I was like, damn.
I don't need to know that.
And then after that, I'm like, let's go get a Pizookie. I'm good.
There you go.
But yeah, that was pretty awesome though. That was a good show because that's where I met these guys. You know.
Yeah, that was. I think you. Not only were we talking at you, you talked back to us.
Yeah. I think I got 3 words in with you maybe.
Yeah, at first you got like 1, so that was like you tripled your word count, dog. Yeah. We talked a lot. I don't remember if we actually talked to you about what Berto and I were thinking about doing, wanted to coach or any of that. We also did get to talk to Brad a little bit, who was working the backstage area and just volunteering.
That was awesome at the NGA California backstage. She goes, "Jeff, is that you?"
That's right, because you guys actually competed the first time in 2006.
Yeah, at a small, tiny little show. I don't even remember the name of the federation was that small.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like I think 4 competitors, like 4 bodybuilders. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But me and Brad kind of, we got to talk a lot backstage. It was kind of cool.
That's right. So you and Brad had competed in 06. Berto and I competed in 07. And then you and I got to compete against each other in 09. Mm-hmm. Then, just like Brad made the decision after he lost narrowly to Berto in 08, you made the decision after losing narrowly to Moji to go up to Washington.
But I was done. Like, I was so content with that season because I was like, man, I did what I set out to do, got my best ever physique, almost won the show. I'm like, I'm good. So I was eating like that weekend. The Sunday I was eating. We had a big barbecue at my house. And then for about 2 or 3 days I was eating. I had gained like 8 or 9 pounds back. I was recovery diet before there was a recovery diet.
You were prototype recovery diet.
So Wade Brown calls me up, the head judge.
Man, he didn't call me up.
He goes, you need to go to Washington to get your pro card. And I'm like, Wade, I'm done. I've gained like 9 pounds. I'm done. Yeah. Because I think I had like 4 more weeks. Yeah, and I'm like, he's like, no, you got the potential. If you bring it, it's yours. So I said, well, you know what? Long story short, I'll think about it. So I went to work the next day at the auto plant, and when you're working on an assembly line, you have all the time in the world to think.
That's right.
So I was just like, man, he got in my head, and I don't want regrets. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get back on it. And I did, and I dropped all that weight, and I even lost like another couple pounds off of that.
Yeah, but it surprises you how much that's water,
Yeah.
It makes you realize just how much there's some storage capacity before you start getting, because you're so depleted going into it too.
What's crazy is like I doubled my cardio up. Like I wouldn't do that nowadays, but back then it was like, how do we get leaner? Oh, let's grind harder.
Do everything.
So yeah, I grinded, got a couple more pounds off. Looking in hindsight, I was flatter than I probably needed to be, but I ended up winning by 1 point against Luke Ellis.
Yep, so you went from losing by 1 point to winning by 1 point.
Yeah.
Luke got under 200 for that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I also went to Washington. Once again, got to be in a class with adults. As a child, I did not belong there yet, but I won the light heavies and then got to watch, just like from the sidelines, waving at Moji and Jeff at the Cap City, I got to wave at Luke Ellis. Now leaner, but looking bigger than he did the previous year. Hungry after losing to the lightweight Brad Loomis, and now even hungrier because he ended up losing by 1 point to the lightweight Jeff Alberts the next year. So the cool thing was that instead of Luke hating 3DMJ after that point for us coming up there and being jerks to him, he became a really good close. He's
a good dude.
Yeah. So big shout out to Luke Ellis, and that's where you won your pro card.
That is, but I think more importantly than that, that's where we kind of, I think, really clicked.
Yes.
All 3 of us.
We worked on you.
Yeah. So, yeah.
We even had dinner together.
Yep.
Yeah, you guys took me out to dinner. That's right.
Yep, we got to serenade the new WNBF pro Jeff Alberts, who had now turned pro in 2 organizations after competing for 10 years, or no longer, since '93.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just being able to come back to the sport with a renewed sense of purpose and the whole 3D Muscle Journey ethos. By the way, he had a blog post or a blog called 3dmusclejourney.com at that time.
It was called 3dmusclejourney.com.
That's right. It was not Team 3DMJ. Berto, myself, and Brad were part of the Natural Movement, which back on the YOLA platform of website hosting. Man, that was a janky website, but it was good to go at the time.
Hey, man, yeah, it was pretty bad, but
by 2018, well, by 2011 standards,
it was pretty bad back then.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. 3DMJ prides itself on keeping this show, our blog, and our YouTube channel as free and relevant sources of information for our community week after week. We also release additional free video courses as often as possible at 3dmjvault.com. If you'd like to help support our mission and our work, please consider becoming a monthly patron of our endeavors. Go to patreon.com/team3dmj and donate a couple dollars per month to our cause of helping educate and grow the drug-free bodybuilding and powerlifting communities worldwide. You can definitely choose to donate more, and if you do so, we'll send you a discount code for future use on any of our paid products, But any little bit helps, and we appreciate your monthly support in any amount that you see fit. So again, you can start assisting the team at patreon.com/team3dmj. That's patreon.com/team3dmj. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Alberto, what was that experience like for you, being basically because after, for the most part, after the Cap City, you were kind of my head coach at that point.
Yeah, well, we knew we needed to get leaner, so we knew what we knew back then, and we worked really hard to try to get you into the proper shape to just be more effective, and because we know you can make it to an overall,
Yeah.
So we worked hard, man. That was rough to watch at times, but you did it. We made the trip. We drove up there.
Did.
And I was optimistic.
Because back then, Jeff wasn't as big.
No, he was.
Jeff was doing a lot of things right through trial and error, but he was also leaving a lot on the table.
Yes.
I think, like if we were to tell you, yeah, Jeff was 159 on stage, and now he's 169 in the same shape, you'd be like, oh my God, how does that happen? It was primarily changing things in prep to hold on to more muscle, I would say, versus...
Yeah.
It wasn't like the dude put on 10 pounds of muscle.
Because my off-season size wasn't that much different.
Yeah.
It was just how I kind of retained during the prep. Yeah.
Because I remember looking at his joints, and I'm like, there's no way we should be the same weight on stage. No way. So in that Cap City overall, I mean, he was the better bodybuilder, but you weren't necessarily that much smaller, So
there was a time point somewhere in 2009 where if you could have snapped your fingers and given me a perfect peak and dropped all the body fat off me, where I might have been able to hang with Jeff Alberto a little bit.
So that's what we did. We took all the fat off you. Again, it was rough, but I was optimistic. I'm like, hey, you never know, basically. And I knew that Luke was doing that show.
Yep.
And I knew Jeff was doing that show, but I still was very confident in what we had.
You felt I was kind of like, he was an apple, he was an orange, and I could come in and be a banana.
Yeah. Well, a lot of this is matchups, basically, and you were kind of, I guess, the balance between both of those. You have a super big dude, and then you have a smaller symmetrical guy, and it's like, oh, this guy's kind of in the middle, and if we come in really good shape, which matters a lot, I think, it matters a little bit more in the amateur ranks, because that's like taking your training wheels off. Can you get in shape?
Especially back then.
Yeah.
Where simply coming in with stride of glutes, you had like
such a novelty,
60-70% chance of winning, if you didn't have like no muscle.
Yeah.
And I came into that show, I think around 184. I was in the mid to low 180s, and I actually did have some dents in my glutes. So I was what we call legally shredded.
Yeah.
When you actually have some dents in your glutes, and you can see that there is definition back there. However, Luke was also just about legally shredded and huge, and Jeff had surpassed the legal limit at that point and was very, very lean, and so I couldn't hang. But that was the first time I thought I looked at when I saw my stage pictures, like, hey, I look like a bodybuilder.
Yep.
Yeah, because I remember after my class, because I was in the middles, I was like, oh, let me go check out the rest of the divisions in the audience. So when I saw you out there, I was like, that doesn't look like the same dude backstage. Because backstage, you just kind of look frumpy a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you came to life. Like everything just kind of came together once you started posing. I was like, that guy's actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, I've gotten that feedback a lot, that if you just see me walking around, I don't look like I lift. But if I diet for 6 months and pose well, then I look pretty good. So that's what you can look forward to there at Comes Genetics, is 99.9% of the time not looking like you lift but being good on stage. So I got that going for me.
You did.
It's most important, right?
Yeah. I got it when it matters. So that was a very cool experience, and I think I had planned to shut it down at that point.
Yeah. Well, we were done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was like, all right, I've gone against everybody. I've done the thing. And I think I was just, I was hungry, but I was also still competitively hungry. So I did the same thing Jeff did, but only for like a weekend. I ate, and I gained a lot of weight. And then when it started to clean up, and I was just kind of being a little saner, and I was thinking about this show in September, I wanted to keep going. And I think I had to sit down with you, and I said, hey man, like, I'll do whatever it takes. Let's get shredded. And we were able to, over the course of 6 weeks, something like that. So it was September 25th, and I competed on like August 10th.
Yeah.
Over those next 6 weeks, I dropped down to 180 pounds, and I was a very water retaining, stressed out, less muscle, jacked up looking, but better looking, as I was able to get down to, I think my lowest weigh-in was 180. And I got past legally shredded. That was the leanest I'd ever been. Actually, the leanest I've been till now.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because 2011 I didn't get quite as lean. I just rested on the fact that I'd improved my physique a little bit and could consistently peak at least a little better. I wasn't destroyed by HIIT. That was really cool because we had connected a lot more. You'd come out to my house. You filmed us training. We trained with Brad Loomis. The four of us had connected at that point.
Yeah.
We were training at what was the Powerhouse Gym just up the road from here. Alberto was literally at my house every other weekend. I've talked about this in other podcasts, but I had lost my father to suicide back in February, so I was a mental mess. I had done a powerlifting meet, 4 shows, been dieting for 32 weeks at this point. We didn't have diet breaks. I just ate after shows, so I had like 48-hour refeeds, every few months. And I was running. The lowest I got was 100 grams of carbs, 40 fat, with 225 protein. That was what got me into the Washington shape. And then to push further than that, I was on daily cardio with 25 fat, 60 carbs, 200 protein. Just getting crushed. And I only got refeeds when Berto decided I looked dangerously flat, which was normally about 3 days after the point where I thought I looked dangerously flat. We were running like 10 lows, 1 high sometimes.
Yeah.
And the high days were like 250 grams of carbs.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, and that would bloat my ankles. That's how beat up I was. Yeah. So we were dealing with a very, very stressed out body, and we just kind of had to coast her in. It was like landing, now as a coach looking back, it was like, oh, I have destroyed this person. This plane has 1 engine. We just need to land it and not look worse.
Yeah.
And the best shape I'd ever come in was the West Coast Classic, very end of September. You took pictures.
Yep.
And I went against a very complete bodybuilder who I was leaner than, but this was one of those few times where you can only out-lean someone so far.
Yeah.
Scott Kluth. We were in the same, didn't make him in the overall because we were in the same class, but then he went on to win the overall. And at that point I was like, hey, we're out of shows unless I want to fly somewhere, and I don't have money. And I'm also out of gas. So that 09 season for me was just an absolute marathon. The good news is I learned how far I could push myself and what I needed to do, and I've never had to push myself that hard since, and I don't think I ever will. Even as hard as it's been getting to this kind of condition now, it just pales in comparison. So that was my experience with the Cap City, my first overall, which was really cool, and getting to talk to these guys backstage. And now we're 09, and I think this is when there started being kind of federation changes. I can't remember if it was 2010 or 2011.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was actually 2010, because that was the first year as a Pro-Am, and it was an IFPA.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
The IFPA was 2010, yeah.
Correct. So 2010, the WNBF was doing things that Bob and Tina at the time weren't comfortable with, and the way they were running things and treating their athletes. There was some issues with Dave Gooden. There was a number of things that had caused a decent amount of press. No one was happy that the WNBF wouldn't allow you to compete in other places if you're a pro. They had exclusive contracts with the magazine at the time. This is a 9-year-old kind of debate now, so it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And again, the people who had a problem with it now own the organization. So I think we can safely just say there was some drama. It was a little silly. What then ended up happening though is that the Cap City, the INBF Cap City became the IFPA and NBF and NANBF Muscle Mayhem. It became a Pro-Am for what was then an equally dominant federation, especially as the magazine became less popular.
Yeah.
There was probably a 5 or 6 year span where the IFPA and the WNBF were equally dominant, having either pro card. You can compete the other way. and it was seen as equally prestigious to win the Yorton Cup, like your Doug Miller, or to win the WNBF Worlds, like your Clarence McGill or your Siobhan Cunningham. So this was kind of a new era that lasted really only until a couple of years ago, when the IFPA had their issues with their amateur federations and some of the splits that happened there. And this was before the NANBF left the WNBF as well, became the primary amateur affiliate of the IFPA, and that's what really elevated it to the same level as the WNBF. So anyway, 2010 was a mind-blowing competition that we got to attend, and this is when we were starting to bring a lot of our athletes to the show. But the first Pro-Am, Philip Ricardo Jr.,
Yep.
Panix Pierre,
Cleveland Thomas.
Yeah, Panix Pierre, by the way, now IFBB Pro Panix Pierre. Cleveland Thomas, who's an IFPA World Champion and a WNBF World Champion.
Yeah.
Because he did beat Siobhan one year, didn't he?
Cleveland?
Yeah, Cleveland beat
Yeah,
Siobhan.
the year I competed, he won.
Yeah, so IFPA lightweight world champ, I think, was beaten by Doug Miller. I don't know if he ever won an overall. Did he ever win the whole Yorton?
I don't think. Yeah, he did.
Cleveland Thomas.
Cleveland
won the
has
whole
won the whole. Yeah, he did. 2012.
Yeah, I think so. 12, I think so. Yep.
So this is before he won the WNBF World. He's an IFPA World Champion. Panix Pierre eventually became an IFBB Pro and competed very highly at the Team Universe. I think he's won his class at Team Universe at that point. Kiyoshi Moody, who has won the PNBA Olympia and is also multiple-time class winner at the Team Universe, just shy of an IFBB Pro card via their natural route. And who am I missing? Kiyoshi Moody, Panix Pierre, Cleveland Thomas, and one other gentleman.
Philip Ricardo.
And Philip Ricardo Jr., of course, who has also done well at the Team Universe, has won the Yorton Cup, has won the PNBA Olympia, and I think the only federation he hasn't competed in was this WNBF, but he was arguably at that time the best natural bodybuilder on the planet. Yeah. The only man I know of who has beaten Doug Miller at Doug Miller's close to peak, maybe not peak.
Yeah.
So that was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen on stage.
And I think if you look at many world events, like that might have been one of the best bodybuilding games like ever played. Like all of these guys, I'd say at the time probably had genetics that were equal to anything in the IFBB, if not better, I feel.
Absolutely.
It was crazy to watch. Like just Cleveland Thomas, like probably one of the best natural bodybuilders ever. Mm-hmm. Philip, one of like a legend. Like you might not know who he is, but if you see a picture, like, oh, that dude.
Yep.
You know, Kiyoshi was like 200 pounds on stage.
Yep.
Panix, like his dimensions made absolutely no sense. It was ridiculous.
It was an insane lineup.
It was. The show was like not nearly as big the next year, I think, because no one wanted to do that.
We're like, no, I'm not doing that. That's
I would say that I don't think we've seen a lineup like that.
That might have been the best one ever.
The only lineup I'd seen that compared would have been the middleweights when you did Worlds.
No, I'm talking about at the Mayhem.
Oh, at the Mayhem? No. Yeah, no. The only time I've seen a comparable lineup has been at World Championship events.
Yeah.
Because the NANBF, what they did is they were allowing pros from all federations to come in.
Yes.
So everyone decided, like, Kiyoshi, we'll let him play. Yep. You know, and everyone was kind of quarantined in their own section. So it was one of those fantasy, like,
it was a fantasy league.
Where, exactly. The what ifs were answered, basically.
Yeah, if you want to elevate natural bodybuilding, that's a way to do it.
Yeah, and big shout out to the fact that all the organizations now, for the most part, let people compete cross, so long as they have a pretty similar banned substance list. You know, which is really good to see. That there's no you can't compete there. There might be no you're not eligible to compete with us, but you don't lose your status these days for competing with anyone else, which is I think a really good step in the right direction for natural bodybuilding. It's not unification in one main league, which would be something I'd like to get close to, but at the very least it's improved the scene. So we're up to 2010. I'm taking long off season, competing in 2011. Berto, what's going on for you?
2010?
Yeah.
The same dealio. I know I saw that, and I'm like, okay, well, glad I didn't compete this year. We'll give it one more year.
So this is pretty cool. Now you're looking at the Muscle Mayhem as a professional.
Yeah.
As a potential place to compete as a professional.
Really close, and to have a show like that, that close. And it's a pro show now. My first pro show, I had to go to Illinois. It's Evansville, Indiana is where I went.
And one thing we should say, since Brad's not here, my last show of 2009 was his pro debut.
It was, yeah.
He did the West Coast Classic Pro Division, and it was a really funny lineup because they had apples and oranges. He was in the same class as Peacock, and he was, I think, 30 pounds lighter than...
He was like a heavyweight, but he was 30 pounds lighter.
He was at the very bottom of the heavyweights. I think he placed either second or last. Yeah. But very respectable showing in a lineup that was probably not where he should have been, you know. Yeah, he had a tough comparison. So that was his pro debut. So he took off 2010. You're not competing in 2010. You did 09.
No, because 09, I was like, okay. I saw myself and can kind of compare to the pros. I'm like, I need more time. Yep. So I took 2010 off.
And Berto, you kind of got shook. Like everyone focuses on the 08 season in the amateurs, where you swept 3 organizations. What happened at the end of 08?
Oh, I got last place.
Yeah. Went from winning every show to placing dead last in Joe Klemczewski's show. It was the Midwest?
Yeah, Mid-America.
Mid-America, which was a really, really competitive show. I believe that was where Martin Daniels won.
Yeah.
Eventual heavyweight world champion and overall world champion.
Yeah. At the time that show we talked about, that was just crazy. That's probably the only guy that was missing.
Yeah.
It's like, could we just get this guy here? But yeah, no, 210, I think, for the capital city, it kind of rebranded things in a way, and that I think would be very important come the next year.
Yeah, so there was a number of things that I think really catapulted this show into becoming the iconic show it is. The first one was just having the most competitive pros, the fantasy football league, everybody coming in. And the next year was our friend, the first arguably star of natural bodybuilding in the social media age. I got called up end of 2010 after we went to a show at Consumnes River College, or high school, and there was this guy, we thought, oh man, if he was to drop 30 pounds, he'd look really good. And he called me up. His name's Matt Ogus. And he said, hey, I've heard about 3DMJ from this guy, Bill, who you competed against in the overall and the NGA. He recommended you guys. Can I get some coaching? And that was the first time I worked with Matt Ogus, and he has incredible fat loss genetics, and he gave me 16 weeks, and he came into to all of the shows looking amazing, and he logged the whole thing. I remember I sent a video to you guys going, hey, check this out. Mm-hmm. This kid is not taking pictures, he took a video. Oh, and by the way, what is this whole 5,000 views thing? What's going on? Mm-hmm. So long story short, he gets into the he does the Mayhem in the amateurs and just brings a ton of exposure via his YouTube channel to the Mayhem.
Yeah, it was Matt versus the Mayhem.
Matt versus. It was the first Matt versus. And he did that again in 2013. And then 2015 he logged a season. So he really helped establish the Cap City, now the Mayhem, as the show of the West Coast. Yeah. If not the show of natural bodybuilding, if you were only aware of natural bodybuilding through YouTube. So that was pretty important. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but so that was 2011, which followed right on the heels of 2010. So 2011, did you guys compete?
With Matt.
That's right. Yep, so we had Ogus in the amateurs, and then we also had this gentleman in the pros. This was your first pro outing since you got. Oh no, you did an NGA show earlier that year.
Yeah, it was. I did a little warm-up show earlier that year, but yeah, I won. After seeing that show in 2010, it's like, for better or for worse, like, I'm a competitive dude. I want to be up there with those guys. I was kind of hoping for that, and it was still a pretty good lineup, but. And
make no mistake, you made tremendous improvements on your physique. When you got on stage in 2011, you looked.
That was when you were with Kiyoshi and them?
Yeah, I was up there with Kiyoshi.
Oh, yeah, because I thought, in my opinion, like, because I watched that show, and I just remember, like, I thought he should have been ahead of Moji Alua. That's how improved his physique looked.
Yes, yeah. You really brought it. I do think you might have gotten marked down because you were hiking the glutes up and your posing wasn't great.
Yeah. But, I kept muscle. That's what it was. I don't think that prep, my calories were like under 3,000, whereas like the time before they were under 2,000.
Oh yeah, you were eating a third of the carbs you actually know you need to eat,
Yeah.
doing cardio you didn't need to do,
Yeah.
and not to mention you had an SI joint injury that prevented you from actually doing real leg training. You were doing air squats.
Yeah.
So no wonder you were on stage at 153 pounds, and then you brought it up to 160.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, muscle retention,
Yeah.
plus a couple of years of off season.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you looked like you belonged in the pros. You were getting compared against Kiyoshi Moody and Moji Alua. So the funny thing is if we'd never seen that 2010 lineup, 2011 was still impressive.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. I think Kiyoshi Moody won the overall that year, am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and then Moji took second or third, maybe fourth.
I think he might have been second.
Yeah, he might have been. But that I can't quite remember the placings, how they shook out. No, Robbie Sardinia took second.
No, he did that. Robbie
That was
did
2012.
10. He did it 2010. He was thrown in that big lineup for his pro debut.
He didn't know, but Robbie Sardinia did it in 2012 and took second.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, he did
Correct.
very well.
Correct.
Came in excellent shape. But yeah, there was some really good lineups in the pros. That was the best you'd ever looked on stage, in my opinion. Was it the pro division of the Muscle Mayhem in 2011? How was that experience? That you having things come together?
I was indifferent about it because I got sixth place, I think. But I was qualified for the Yorton, and that was important at the time. Mm-hmm. But it was nice to have a show that, again, was in my backyard.
Yeah.
And it was in Sacramento, California, which, has access to the Bay Area. I lived in the Bay Area at the time. So it didn't feel like a lot of these shows are sometimes like in the middle of nowhere.
Correct.
So
like
I think that was so that was appealing. I think it's like, oh, we have a show that's in California. People, they think California's a pretty cool place. We're gonna have this more consistently, and the trend has followed. Like the people show up to the show because I think one, it's in California, and then two, because of the rebranding and because of the Ogus effect, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this started to kind of mark the dominance of this show as just being that big pro-am that people do. Like we said, we've had the fortune of putting a lot of clients into the show because Bob and Tina do such a good job. They awarded us a coaching award. Was it in 2013 or 2014?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, I can't remember.
So I can't remember which one, but that was really cool. This was right after I'd gone to New Zealand. It was, I think, 2014. And there's a hilarious picture back in the day of me on Skype, been photoshopped onto the three of these guys accepting the award on stage, which is hilarious. That's right. So it was 2013 because I did come back in 2014 to be there. 2013 was also the year that we had an all 3DMJ open bodybuilding natural overall.
Every class winner. We're talking about men's bodybuilding. I know this is a dominant men's bodybuilding podcast, but we had 23 or 4 total athletes in the show, and I think we were about a quarter or a third of the show.
Yeah, the show was like 110, 120 competitors in total. It would have been bigger back then if men's physique was as popular, which had only come out in 2012. If bikini was in the show, which it was not yet. So remember, this is a 110, 120 competitor show before there was a bikini class and before men's physique was popular. So this was at the height of natural bodybuilding. This was at the height of the Ogus era, I would say.
Yeah.
And we had Kevin Riley, Matt Ogus, and
Caleb.
That's right. Caleb, who had won the NGA, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, he won the NGA California a month prior.
Yeah, so we had an NGA pro going in. I think Kevin was also an NGA pro, didn't he?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, because he'd done an NGA show back in the day. And then Matt Ogus is just, a phenomenal amateur bodybuilder. But this was the first time I'd realized the conditioning standard is higher. Because all the Matt Ogus fans he's not in shape. He was legally shredded. He had glute striations.
He was in shape.
Yeah, he was definitely in shape in 2013. In better shape than he was in 2011. I think people just had a tough time accepting that Kevin Riley was shredded to the bone.
Yeah, he was. I think that overall, like looking back on the years, I mean, not as good as the 2006, but it was up there. Like probably top 4 or 5, maybe top 3.
Absolutely.
It was pretty ridiculous.
That was a very, very competitive overall, and it was hard to be disappointed about not seeing my boy Ogus win because it was a 3DMJ overall. It was awesome. It was so cool. That was. We kind of, I don't know about you guys, but I felt a little intimidated. I was like, we just took the biggest show that we know of in our corner of the world, and we got all 3 of the men's bodybuilding divisions. I was like, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
I think that was a very prideful moment for us, though.
Yes, it was.
Because, I mean, they were all, you're the head coach, so.
I was coach for 2.
That's right,
Matt with you?
I was coaching
for
August.
But yeah, so it's, I know you guys put a lot of work into that, but they work, I mean, those guys are just like workhorses.
Well, I think what it meant to me was these guys would be great bodybuilders regardless, all of them. But it takes a lot for a really good athlete to be like, here, take this over. Here are the keys to the car.
I'll be the soldier.
And to me, after seeing, I was like, oh wow, we got these guys who I think a few years back when we were like ready and we wanted this, they would have been like, nah, I do a relatively good job on my own.
Yeah.
So that was that's what it meant to me. Was it like, oh wow, I think we're respected now, and if not, after this, we're definitely going to be respected as like, hey, we produce good things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was, I think, a momentous point for us, and that was probably one of the first times I really realized we're holding a mantle. We have to be ambassadors. We have to be respectful. I started being very attentive to the way, even more so the way I was interacting online, the way I was representing myself, taking a lot of cues from Jeff on how to be a true professional in terms of how I presented myself as a coach. And we were getting better with our meetings. We'd actually formed an LLC. We were trying to do it right, and I think that, at least for me, it made it very real.
Yep.
Yeah. I think for me, like that year, I kind of felt like, oh, I'm actually a coach.
Yeah.
Because up until that point, I was always kind of thinking of myself as a bodybuilder first, like athlete first, then coach.
Yeah.
That was kind of the year it kind of, like 2013, 2014, I flipped around.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of a cool moment. And funny story, I don't know if it's funny to me now, I don't know. Maybe it is. These guys, guess who did all the dream tanning? I did like 80% of the dream tanning. These guys are the whole time talking.
2014, that's true.
But I'll say this, the next day I was actually leaner.
That's right. Yeah. So I don't know why you're mad. 2014 was, till now, your best season, and maybe that dream tanning was what you needed.
I needed the activity.
That's right.
I'm a sloth.
That's right. So let's see.
I was prepping, so I was useless.
Yeah, so you did 2011.
2011, yeah.
And then you both did 2014 together.
No, I didn't do 14. I was about 3 weeks short on time.
We guest posed.
That's right, but you were dieting in 2014.
I was dieting in 2014.
You didn't do the show.
No.
That's right. So you did the Mayhem in 2014.
Him and Brad.
Yep.
You and Brad.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like?
Okay, it was good because I knew more at this point, but I tried to combine powerlifting and bodybuilding together, and that was rough. So I had USAPL Nationals 4 days after that.
Even though neither one went very well, let me just say for the record, that impressed the shit out of me. I think it's awesome, but go ahead.
Yeah. So the goal that year was I was supposed to have 3 things lined up, basically right next to each other. There's going to be the capital city, the Mayhem. Yep. The USAPL Nationals, and then Team Universe. Yep. So I wanted to do those 3. And at that point, the totals for USAPL Nationals, if I went by the year before, I'm like, if I get all my lifts, I could win this. Yeah. Or like place like 5th worst case.
Yeah, you were top 5 looking at it. Like if you'd had a 9 for 9 day, and we were looking at this was right before USAPL Nationals really blew up, and we started getting ridiculous totals. This was back when I want to say you could qualify for the Arnold Classic with a 400 Wilks.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So 400 Wilks was considered legit. Berto was looking at a mid 400 Wilks if you had a great day. And dude, no one was getting a 500 Wilks back at that point.
No, nobody.
That wasn't a thing.
Some guy in Russia somewhere.
There was a few crazy freaks who were getting a 500 Wilks.
He's 5'2", yeah. So.
Yeah. And now, just to put it out there, 3DMJ Phenom coached by Brad Loomis, New Zealander, Kiwi, my man, with a 500 Wilks, placed 6th in Taylor Atwood. Well, they switched to IPF points. But yeah, if Chris had been competing a few years prior, he would be the 74 kg world champion. But now he got a 500 Wilks on the dot and placed outside of the top 5, just to tell you how competitive powerlifting's gotten.
Yeah, the 500 Wilks is like the striated glutes of powerlifting, basically.
And so now today, Berto and I have realized that we are not dual sport athletes. No. We are good bodybuilders who also enjoy the big 3.
Yeah, and that day definitely sealed it. I think I got 12th place or something like that.
That ain't no joke, though.
No, it was a blast. The challenge was a blast, but it definitely impacted my bodybuilding where I was afraid to push a little bit more. I was right at that place where my body starts to get really uncomfortable, and I'm gonna have to see a decline in performance. So
injury prone.
Yeah. So it was still a blast, and the show lineup. I don't even recall. I got 4th. I got 3rd place.
Yeah,
so I did okay.
You did very well.
Yeah, I did okay. But yeah, and I think I was still kind of in doubt because natural bodybuilding had always kind of done this up and down thing. And I'm like, is this show always going to be like this good? Yeah. And 2010, now it's 2014. I'm like, oh wow, like some really good pros are still showing up to this thing.
Absolutely. It is still a very competitive pro show.
It was very comforting.
Because that year Marshall Johnson won. No, it was Chris. Chris, I can't even pronounce his last name. Yeah, him. Yeah. But Marshall won your class.
Marshall won my class, and then Liam, who was from the UK, came down as well. So
who with Liam gets shredded.
They both get shredded. Both him and Marshall get shredded. Yep.
So yeah, it sealed it to me. I'm like, oh, this show is going to be good for a long time, and we have it here in California, which was still home for me at the time.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there were some other good pros in that show too. In 2014.
And another thing, at this point, like a lot of it's a big enough show where a lot of the local NPC guys go out there.
Did Phil do it that year too?
No, he didn't. No, but so a lot of people who are kind of in the community, like the knock on like natural bodybuilding is like, hey, who wants to look like that?
Right.
And to me, it's amazing to see these people come in and see these pro lineups because it opens up with the pro lineup. So while you're nice and fresh and you can still believe what you're seeing. Like you sit down and you're like, oh my God. Yep.
It's interesting to see people kind of lose their minds and then to tell them, yeah, he's 150 pounds. And they go, how's that possible? Like some of the NPC folks just don't get it.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good testament to just getting in shape, having good structure, peaking well, having a training age under your belt, and just understanding how much this is a marathon and a technical, tactical, strategic way to get good, or just be a freak. And the level of the genetic depth in the pros is pretty impressive.
Yeah, because I would say that I think what kind of separated why he got 3rd wasn't the fact that he wasn't peaked or his symmetry. It was more like the other 2 guys have been trained longer.
Yeah, Liam has a level of density and a level of. I don't even think he was that much leaner than you. It's just there's this gnarly graininess when Liam's in shape. You can just see the years of training underneath it.
And same thing with Marshall,
Yeah, Marshall obviously at the time I think he was 51.
Early 50s.
Yeah, he was early 50s and at the peak of his career. And it just when he's in shape, when he comes in looking hot, man, there's nothing wrong with him.
No, he's pretty complete.
Yeah, and I think there was a year I want to say he only lost by 1 point to Doug Miller in the overall for the Orton Cup. Just to give you an idea of how much of a threat he is.
Was that at 1 point?
That's what I heard.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's just something to keep in mind. That being complete, not making mistakes, and coming in perfect is put that on top of good genetics, and you can see some upsets for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so placing top 3 in that lineup was pretty impressive.
Yeah. And again, now I knew, hey, I have this really good show here in my backyard. I lived 5 minutes from the show at that point.
Yeah, at that point you're living in my old home.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is no hotel, no nothing, none of the travel worries. This is going to be great. Yep. So yeah, it was comforting to know that I think the show is going to be around for a while, and this show is going to be just as good as it was prior to that, before the pro-am, and it's going to now include the pro portion. So I was ecstatic about that at that point. It's here to stay, is what I thought.
And what's also cool too is that every single year it's like the same, like as far as the structure, like they're on the money with everything. Everything starts on time. It flows real well.
It's the 20th year.
Exactly.
They know what they're doing.
So that consistency, they just keep improving every single year.
Yep. And I believe that was the last time a 3DMJ coach competed at the Mayhem. It was 2014. Is that right?
Yes.
That is it.
Yeah, that was it.
So Jeff narrowly missed it just because he wanted to be in his peak shape, but ended up being in his peak shape when it counted at Worlds. I know this isn't the Mayhem, we're talking about the Mayhem, but it's just worth talking about just how awesome that experience was. Berto and I came out to Boston. We got to work backstage. I was very fortunate as well to have Tara Abiger, who she placed second in the middleweights in the pros. And honestly, there was a battle there. That was pretty awesome to see her fighting for first. We had Evan Godby, and I think his first time at Worlds.
Yes. Well, as a pro.
As a pro, right. And honestly, I still stand by this. From the front, I think he was in first. I think, you know, when it turned around, you could see that some of those heavies are just ridiculous. But Evan Godby, there are some pictures of him at Worlds in 2014. You're like, oh, that's your world champ.
He's Australian oak from the front.
He's a big man.
He's a big man. He came in shape, you know, and then his structure is incredible from the front. I also had Neil Kachuk. Shout out to Canada. He did his first world outing. He did almost every world championship for all the different pro divisions he was a part of, and he did very well. Went on to even do better in subsequent seasons. So I had 2 pro competitors competing, and then we
had amateur Carl.
That's right. Yep. Carl won his pro card.
Yep.
At Worlds, and I think he beat out just barely Lee from the UK, who is someone I've had the opportunity to consult with on and off. So we had a really good showing, met a lot of great people. That was an awesome experience. And Jeff got to be in, like I said, probably the only lineup that compared to that 2010 Mayhem that I've seen in person was the middleweights that year at Worlds, where they for the first year they allowed crossovers. Siobhan Cunningham, Cleveland Thomas, Levi Burke, and Jeff Alberts were your top 4. And Levi, what's his top placing? I think he's
won. Has he won weights?
Second to Brian.
Oh, that's right. He always gets
right. Second to arguably the most dominant natural bodybuilding champion in the world, Brian Whitaker, who united the IFPA Yorton Cup and WNBF Worlds in 2015, set a new conditioning standard no one had ever believably seen before. So we're talking about second to the best in the world, and then 2 world champions were the ones. And it's not like Levi only competed at Worlds. Like he's won pro shows, you know. So this is Jeff Alberts going against 3 of the top natural bodybuilder middleweights in the world, and hanging in there. And we weren't sure where he was going to be, either 3rd or 4th. I think that the judges did a great job, and placing 4th in that lineup is an incredible career achievement. So big shout out to you, Jeff. Nice work.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think I definitely got judged fairly. I think if I would have been a little bit fuller, I might have been able to squeak 3rd. But yeah, those 3 guys are just insane.
Yeah.
Like I knew Siobhan in Cleveland. Like I'm not going to touch those guys. But just being on stage with them is just like, here I am, you know, starting back in 1986, and here I am in 2014 with some of the best natural bodybuilders in the world. So that right there was like a huge accomplishment, and I was pretty content after that.
I think it's also worth saying how you got to Worlds. The WNBF just goes to show you how much I think it's in great hands and it's going in the right direction. Used to not allow other pros to compete, and then actually gave you an invite because you won the KC show.
Yeah, so basically I remember when I got my WNBF pro card in 2009, that's when they kind of weren't letting you cross over.
Yep.
And I didn't like the fact that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to be able to compete wherever I wanted to go. So it kind of turned me off a little bit, so I kind of gravitated more towards the IFPA.
Which ironically, Bob and Tina had switched to shortly after that.
Yeah, so basically once they kind of changed the rules, then I was supposed to do the IFPA Yorton Cup in 2014.
Yep.
But because we had a seminar in the Dominican, I couldn't do it.
Right.
So it was the same day. So the WNBF, basically kind of allowed me to compete because I won the Pro International. So
IFPA Pro International winner against some very good bodybuilders. Yeah. I think Eric Alstrup. Am I forgetting?
Eric Alstrup. Yeah. No. That was the year him and I competed.
That's right. That
2011.
was 2011. Yeah.
Mackey was there with you.
2014 with Greeno Mackey, Marshall Johnson.
The 19-year-old kid.
Davian
Hill.
Yeah.
19.
And then in the overall was Mark. I forget his last name.
Ball of muscle though.
Yeah, basically I just remember in the overall going, there's no way I'm gonna beat this guy. He was like just a ball of muscle. And I'm like, this guy, like, because I think at the time he was high 180s. I was like 170.
Yeah, he was the heavy.
He just looked like ginormous to me backstage. I'm like, okay, I'll just go out there and pose and have fun.
Yep.
And fortunate enough to get a 1-point victory.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing. So just to give you an idea, the KC International is a competitive pro show. It's definitely not one of the smaller shows. So for Jeff Alberts, for you to have won the KC International and then go to Worlds and place behind 3 of the top 3 in the world, that was an awesome season. And when's the last time you competed?
2014.
That was the last season. So that brings us to here, where I have not been on stage since 2011, when I did my last season before I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on my education, powerlifting, because it doesn't take so much mental acuity. I won the Nevada State INBA and got my PNBA pro qualification. Not technically a pro because I never competed with it. So this year I decided, you know what, I want to come back and I want to put myself against the best of the best and come back to our hometown for the 10-year anniversary, where Jeff and I are taking the stage for the first time since 2009 at the same show, him in the pros, me in the amateur. And I'm just really excited. I feel like we've already won just getting to this point.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, that's all I got.
Well, I just think that, I had a great season in 2014, but if you look back at the body of work from where we started to where we're at now, like each one of us has kind of had our own part. And when I look at you, I'm like, there's no other person, in my opinion, I might be biased, but no one,
I'll take this biased opinion.
In my opinion, no one has done more for the sport of natural bodybuilding since 2011, 2012. So
I don't know how to take that.
You may not be a
it.
pro like bodybuilder, but in my eyes, you're a pro bodybuilder / the man in natural bodybuilding. I don't think there's going to be too many people that are going to argue with me about that.
Thank you.
And I think looking at him, kind of the same deal from the beginning to where we're at now. Like in his own way, he's catapulted the sport like leaps and bounds. Might not be through like the science like you do, but as far as like an athlete / coach, no one's given more to the sport, I think, in my opinion.
I think this is going to be a massive...
You guys can see what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get these guys to cry because I'm the godfather, and that's what I do.
It's going to be a sausage fest in a moment, because I think Berto and I wouldn't have had the legitimacy nor the platform without what you created and the ethos that we got behind. We were just kind of two science nerds. I was fortunate to have some gifts around being obsessed with studying stuff. Berto happened to have the gifts of glutes and delts, and a great way of communicating on social media, and an alluring personality, and those wonderful locks. I mean, that hair.
I was bald at the time, man.
You bounced hair all over the place. You had every hairstyle that existed from 2009 to now, which is probably the most impressive thing. That's probably not natty. I don't know how you do that, but there's got to be some performance-enhancing hair drugs there.
Keratin.
PEDs, yeah. Keratin.
And then Brad, I think he's kind of like the heart and soul.
Absolutely.
I mean, this guy in 2011, when I was basically hit rock bottom in my life, like going through divorce, bankruptcy, lost my job at the auto plant. Mm-hmm. This dude came all the way from Portola on New Year's Eve, left his family to come make sure that I wasn't by myself turning the new year.
Nope.
So that's the kind of guy that Brad is. And I know Brad, if I said, hey man, I'm in the dirt or whatever, he's gonna be right there. So I think he's kind of been like our backbone when it comes to support system. And no one, in my opinion, is caring as Brad is.
Absolutely. There's you always know what you're getting with Brad. He's he wears his heart on his sleeve. You know he's genuine. He doesn't really know how not to be Brad. And it's not like he's not here with us on this podcast, but it's not like he was playing around. Like he competed with you guys in 2011.
Yeah. And
he got to a very high level in powerlifting as well, taking silver, I think in the 2015 or 2015 USAPL national championships in the masters class. So he's been doing the damn thing ever since, and now battling injury and here to support us and coaching and bringing a ton of competitors to the highest level. So I think if there is any collective respect is what we should have. I think that he's definitely a part of that, and you guys are a huge portion of why we are here today, and I couldn't be more proud.
Yeah, and well, this show kind of brings us back to that.
Yeah, well, and then we can't forget Andrea over there, who...
That's right. Trying to stay off camera.
Who I think if she didn't do what she's doing for us as making us run at like the engine of our team.
I'm gonna say something straight up.
We would be probably dead in the water.
I'm gonna say something straight up right now. As much as Andrea was not there at the start and maybe feels like, I'm not the core of the 3DMJ, I 100% believe we would not be having a 10-year anniversary without Andrea. We wouldn't be here. So that's something that I feel very strongly about. I think you'd be selling tires and I'd be doing my own thing. And Berto would still have great hair but not have the familial support. And Brad would be trying to open his gym back up or working 40 hours a week scanning people. Because we weren't doing what we needed to be doing for years. Like 3 years, we were putting athletes in shows, we were doing well, but we were not... We had that YOLO website too long, let's put it that way. You know what I'm saying?
We did, man.
Yeah.
So that's like 10-year mayhem, 3DMJ. It's more than just, hey, let's get shredded glutes in place. There's a lot of history here.
Yes. And
as much as I kind of knew in the back of my mind that, I better hurry up with this prep because I might not make it if I don't hurry.
Yeah.
Like going to you and saying like 7 or 8 weeks ago, hey man, I need your support.
Let's
I need your emotional support to get this done, because for me, it wasn't about, hey, I want the mayhem to win, or say, hey, I'm competing against the Sam Okinolas of the world. It's like, I want to be a part of this. I want to continue to belong and be a part of what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Because I missed out from 2009. Here we are 10 years later. I finally get to get back on that stage and kind of go back to our roots.
It's the same for me, man. This return to my competitive season has been truly momentous. I've talked about it on 45 different podcasts, so I'm not going to go into it much, but it's the 10-year anniversary of my father's death. It's the 10-year anniversary of the formation of 3DMJ. I haven't competed in 8 years, and I got to compete in the home state of my dad in April with Brandon and Alberto, which meant the world to me. And then I got to do the River City Classic, which was just a really, really cool, well-ran show here in Sacramento. And I've been able to have nostalgia for the last few weeks. And it's going to get capped off with coming back to the same stage with you. And knowing that we wouldn't be here without Andrea, that we got Brad in the corner. August is coming out. There's so much richness to this show. So Jeff Nippard, he won this show. And then I had the pleasure and privilege of coaching him to his pro debut, where he placed second. And he's going to be out here. Sam Okinola, he's the heavyweight world champ, and he's doing the pro show. So also Ace Baldwin, good friend of mine and who I got the opportunity to coach for multiple years. He won his pro card here last year, coming in just absolutely peeled and diced, repping 3DMJ, which we really appreciated, and now he's doing the pros. So there's so much richness to who's doing the show. We're bringing 11 athletes in.
I was saying just the fact that we got athletes coming in from all over the world to do it.
Yes.
So it's just like we're just keeping that history going, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, we've got athletes from Brazil.
Yeah. UK. Back east, Midwest,
all over the U.S.
Like, I don't have any local athletes in the show. That's
how much this
shows how this show's expanded.
Yeah. It used to be the show that the three of us and Brad did because it was, an hour and a half away. And now people are coming from, shout out to Marvin, who has come to multiple of the seminars, and just recently at the UEBC, we had a pickup bodybuilding game, which I think he got me on. But he's competing. He's coming out from Hong Kong. He's working with Renaissance Periodization, another awesome organization. So there's just a tremendous amount of buzz around this show, respect, connection, and community from the natural bodybuilding world. And it all starts over 10 years ago, even longer than that, but at least for us it started 10 years ago.
And it's like, for me, getting to, like, he still has long hair and scruff, and so it's just like...
He's bringing it back.
He's
not bringing sexy back, but he's bringing whatever that is back,
Like, I'm just awesome. Glad I got to meet you guys backstage and all that, like, and this guy is, like, the godfather of my son. I
Yes.
mean, that's how
Quite
what
literally.
This is how far it's come. So, and I don't think we should forget Bob and Tina,
Absolutely
who's
not.
basically provided the platform to make this all happen.
And, you know, we've joked about it with them, but Bob and Tina were like, who are these young upstarts? What are they doing? What are they trying to do? They're trying to put on seminars to then giving us the gift on stage of acknowledging what we've done. And I just can't tell you guys how much we appreciate what you do, providing the platform, growing the WMVF, taking the reins after being promoters for 20 years and being with the NGA, the IFPA, back with the WMVF, and now running it. There's not many people I can think of who have sacrificed more time and energy and given more love and consistent, excellent shows to the sport. So hats off. His hat off to you, Bob and Tina. And I think that brings us pretty much to, we're 4 days out.
I'm gonna kick your ass.
You're in the wrong division. You already, yeah. Yeah, so there's going to be me in the open division for the first time in 10 years. Jeff, first time at the Cap City or the Mayhem as a pro. And we'll have everyone backstage, and we're just really looking forward to it. So thank you for letting us wax philosophical, wax emotional, and go through our history. If there's only 2 people listening to this, we're fine with it, because I'm going to be listening to this.
Yeah, I agree.
Me
Yeah,
too.
so apologies, but sorry, not sorry. Hope you enjoyed some part of this.
Hey everybody, it's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.